Good evening, everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode of Science to Sleepy. Tonight, I want to invite you into a journey of thought, a gentle exploration, one that floats somewhere between science and philosophy, between dream and discovery. As you settle in, let your mind wander with me. We'll ask a simple yet profound question. What if Earth was a test? Not just a planet spinning in space, but a cosmic classroom, a simulation, or even a universal exam of our character, our intelligence, and our compassion. Together, let's drift through science, history, and imagination, and see what answers or mysteries we might find along the way. What if Earth was a test? The moment such a thought enters the human mind, it opens a vast corridor of speculation that stretches from the oldest myths of civilization to the modern inquiries of science and philosophy. The idea itself is deceptively simple, almost childlike in its curiosity, but within its simplicity lies a profound depth that has shaped entire cultures, religious traditions, and even scientific theories. To ask whether Earth is a test is to question not only the purpose of life, but the nature of existence itself. It is an invitation to imagine that everything we know, the oceans that stretch endlessly, the stars that crown our night skies, the struggles and triumphs of human life, might be more than random occurrences in a chaotic universe. Instead, they might be carefully placed markers along a journey of growth, learning, and discovery. When we ask the question, we are echoing something deeply human. Across time, civilizations have looked around at the natural world and wondered why it is the way it is. Why do storms come and go? Why do we struggle and then recover? Why is joy fleeting? And why is pain so deeply etched into the human story? If Earth were just a physical place with no larger meaning, these events could be seen as random occurrences, accidents of biology and geology. But when framed as a test, these very challenges and mysteries become something else entirely. They become lessons. The test, then, is not written in paper and ink, but in the rhythms of life itself. Every sunrise might be a question, every challenge an exam, and every act of kindness an answer waiting to be graded by some unseen intelligence or force of the universe. From a scientific perspective, the human mind is wired to find meaning, even where none may exist. Psychologists call it pattern recognition, and it has served humanity well, allowing our ancestors to survive by seeing threats and opportunities in the world around them. Yet when this instinct to seek meaning stretches beyond immediate survival, it transforms into philosophy and spiritual speculation. We begin to wonder if there is a design, if there is a teacher watching, if there is a lesson plan behind the great canvas of life. The mere act of asking if Earth is a test places us in a dialogue not just with ourselves, but with the universe. It makes us both students and seekers. The power of the question also lies in how it reframes everyday experiences. Think of the small frustrations that pepper life: traffic on a busy highway, disagreements with loved ones, moments of fear or uncertainty. If Earth is simply a neutral stage, these are random inconveniences. But if Earth is a test, they take on new significance. Each frustration becomes a chance to demonstrate patience, each argument an opportunity to practice forgiveness, and each fear a question that asks whether we can overcome it with courage. It does not matter whether one believes in divine design or cosmic chance. The framing of life as a test transforms our relationship with it, turning chaos into curriculum. Even within science, there is a strange parallel. Evolution itself, as described by Charles Darwin, can be viewed as a kind of test. Species face challenges, adapt, and those who pass survive. Those who fail disappear. Life on Earth, then, has always been tested by climate, by predators, by disease, by scarcity. The human species, standing on the shoulders of billions of years of evolution, is here because life before us passed countless exams set by the laws of nature. In this sense, Earth has always been a testing ground, not in the moral or spiritual sense, but in the relentless, impartial, and scientific sense of survival and adaptation. Yet even that bare scientific process raises questions that feel philosophical. If nature itself creates a constant state of testing, could it be more than just an accident? Could survival, learning, and growth be the very point of existence? Culturally, the idea of Earth as a test has been central to countless traditions. Ancient Egyptians believed that the heart of the deceased would be weighed against a feather, a cosmic examination of one's life. In Christianity, Earth is described as a place of trial, where choices echo into eternity. In Buddhism, life itself is seen as a cycle of suffering and learning, a test that can lead to enlightenment. Even in indigenous traditions across the Americas, life is often framed as a journey where challenges are not meaningless, but meant to shape the soul, the tribe, and the connection to nature. These diverse traditions, separated by oceans and centuries, seem to whisper the same suspicion that life is not random, that we are here to be measured, that Earth itself is a stage for testing something beyond our immediate comprehension. Modern science, too, retains variations of this idea, though cloaked in different language. The simulation hypothesis, for instance, suggests that our universe might be an advanced computational test run by beings far beyond our understanding. In this framework, Earth is not just a planet but a program, and every decision we make might be data in an experiment. While this theory is controversial and speculative, it resonates with the same ancient curiosity. Are we being tested? If so, by whom? And for what? Even physicists who are cautious about such ideas acknowledge that the universe appears remarkably fine-tuned for life, as though the conditions were carefully set. Could this fine-tuning itself be part of the test, an environment meticulously crafted to see how far intelligence and consciousness can evolve? Yet, asking if Earth is a test does not necessarily mean assuming an examiner exists. The test might not be administered by gods, aliens, or simulators. It might be woven into the very fabric of existence itself, a natural law like gravity or entropy. Perhaps life, by its very nature, must struggle and adapt. Perhaps consciousness, once it awakens, must wrestle with meaning, morality, and mortality. The test might not be overseen by a judge, but written into the code of reality, a universal requirement for growth. In this sense, the question transforms again. Earth as a test may not be about passing or failing in the traditional sense, but about learning, expanding, and evolving in ways that matter beyond our immediate comprehension. What makes the question even more compelling is how it blurs the boundaries between science, philosophy, and spirituality. It invites a physicist to speak in the same breath as a poet, a neuroscientist to wonder alongside a priest, a philosopher to ponder with a child staring at the night sky. The question democratizes curiosity. It does not belong only to the learned or the devout, but to anyone willing to pause and wonder. For the tired worker resting after a long day, the thought that their struggles might mean something can bring comfort. For the scientist gazing into the deep cosmos, the suspicion that existence might have purpose provides fuel for discovery. For the philosopher, the question is an endless well of inquiry that never runs dry. Ultimately, to ask whether Earth is a test is to open the door to a mindset of reflection and responsibility. If Earth is a test, how should we live? If Earth is a test, what are the questions being asked of us? If Earth is a test, what qualities matter most? Strength, intelligence, compassion, resilience? And if Earth is a test, are we meant to face it alone? Or is the very act of cooperation, by helping one another, part of the exam itself? By asking the question, we are already participating in the test, already demonstrating curiosity, imagination, and the drive to seek meaning in the vast and mysterious theater of existence. When viewed through the scientific lens, the idea that Earth could be a test takes on a fascinating form, because science is not usually concerned with purpose, but with process. Science asks how things work, how systems evolve, and how life adapts, but it often avoids questions of ultimate meaning. Yet even within that framework, the story of Earth reads like a vast examination hall, where species are tested by the forces of nature, where environments shift and pressure living organisms to adapt, and where intelligence itself appears to be graded by survival. If Earth were a test, science provides the mechanics of how that test might be administered, not by any conscious examiner but by the rules of physics, chemistry, and biology that govern existential evolution, one of the most powerful lenses science has given us to understand life. At its heart, evolution is about variation, struggle, and selection. Species are born into environments filled with challenges, predators, climate shifts, scarcity of resources, diseases, and natural disasters. Each species must navigate these hurdles, and those that adapt survive long enough to pass their genes forward. This process is relentless and impartial, yet it mirrors the structure of a test in a way that is difficult to ignore. The exam questions are written in the language of natural selection, and the answers are found in the traits that allow life to endure. Fail the test, and a species disappears into extinction. Pass, and life continues, sometimes more complex, sometimes more resilient, sometimes more intelligent than before. The fossil record tells the story of these exams across deep time. Entire dynasties of creatures rose and fell. The mighty dinosaurs, who once dominated the planet, failed one great test when an asteroid impact altered Earth's climate dramatically. Mammals, small and unassuming at the time, passed that same test by adapting quickly and finding opportunities in the new world that emerged. From there, life continued to evolve until one species, Homo sapiens, emerged with intelligence so advanced that it began to ask questions about its own existence. Through this scientific perspective, Earth becomes a testing ground not only for survival, but for the emergence of consciousness itself. The exam is not about memorization or arithmetic, but about resilience, creativity, cooperation, and adaptation on a scale measured in millions of years. The cosmos itself provides another scientific angle. The conditions of Earth are remarkably suited for life as we know it. The planet sits in what scientists call the habitable zone, not too hot and not too cold, with liquid water available on its surface. The atmosphere contains the right balance of gases, and the planet is shielded by a magnetic field that protects it from solar radiation. The moon stabilizes Earth's tilt, creating seasons and a relatively stable climate over long periods. To some, these coincidences suggest fine-tuning, as though the exam was set up to give life a chance to answer its questions. Physicists refer to this as the anthropic principle, the idea that the universe appears to have properties that make the emergence of observers like us possible. Whether this is evidence of design or simply the natural outcome of countless possibilities is debated, but through the scientific lens, it still feels as the Earth itself is uniquely positioned to test the potential of life. Neuroscience adds another layer, focusing on the human brain and its capacity for thought, emotion, and decision-making. If Earth is a test, then the human brain is the pencil we are given to write our answers. The brain did not appear overnight. It evolved over millions of years, shaped by the pressures of survival. The ability to remember past dangers, to imagine future scenarios, to solve problems, and to cooperate with others, all of these were skills demanded by the exams of nature. Even morality, which often feels like a spiritual concern, has roots in neuroscience. Cooperation and empathy increased survival chances for early humans, making them more successful as groups rather than as isolated individuals. The test of survival rewarded those who cared for one another, embedding compassion into the neural architecture of humanity. Psychology, a sister discipline to neuroscience, reveals how individuals respond to challenges. Stress, for example, activates the body's fight or flight response, preparing us for danger. Too much stress, however, overwhelms the system, while moderate stress can make us sharper and more focused. This balance suggests that the human mind itself is tuned to face tests. Life's difficulties activate growth, resilience, and sometimes creativity. The hardships we face daily might be viewed as exam questions designed not to destroy us, but to challenge us to develop greater strength and understanding. Through this lens, Earth is not just a physical test, but a psychological one, shaping the human spirit as much as the human body. Astronomy widens the scope even further. Scientists now know that there are billions of planets in our galaxy alone, many of them orbiting stars in habitable zones. The search for extraterrestrial life is, in a way, the search for other testing grounds. If we find that life has emerged elsewhere, it will suggest that the test is not unique to Earth, but a universal process written into the very laws of nature. If life is rare, then Earth's test becomes even more remarkable, as though our planet has been chosen or happened to fall into the extraordinary role of nurturing consciousness in a cosmos that is otherwise silent. The scientific lens cannot tell us whether the test has a purpose, but it shows us that Earth is extraordinary in its capacity to sustain life and intelligence. Technology and human innovation also reveal a testing pattern. Humanity has been confronted with countless challenges, from building shelter against the cold to curing deadly diseases. Each obstacle demanded ingenuity, and each breakthrough propelled civilization forward. The Industrial Revolution, the space age, and the digital era were all responses to the questions posed by Earth's natural and social environment. When a virus spreads, science responds with vaccines. When resources run low, technology seeks alternatives. When the environment changes, societies must innovate or collapse. In this sense, the scientific narrative of human progress can be read as a continuous series of exams, each one harder and more complex than the last, with survival and advancement depending on our ability to answer them wisely. Even physics itself contains echoes of testing. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy or disorder tends to increase in a closed system. Yet within this framework of growing disorder, life appears as a kind of rebellion, creating order, complexity, and meaning against the backdrop of chaos. Could this be the ultimate test of existence, to generate life and intelligence in a universe where disorder is the default? If so, Earth is the arena where the struggle plays out, a place where the laws of physics create the conditions for order to emerge, grow, and eventually reflect upon itself in the form of human consciousness. Seen through science, Earth as a test is not about moral judgment or divine command, but about adaptation, resilience, and discovery. It is a test without a visible examiner, governed instead by natural laws that are impartial yet relentless. The questions are written in DNA, in ecosystems, in shifting climates and cosmic radiation. The answers are found in survival, in creativity, in cooperation, and in the ability of life to not only endure, but to expand its understanding of the universe. The scientific lens does not diminish the mystery of the question, it sharpens it, showing us that even without invoking higher powers, Earth can be seen as a vast testing ground, one where every species, every mind, and every moment is part of a grand experiment in what life can become when we turn toward the psychological perspective. The idea that Earth might be a test becomes less about the external environment and more about the inner landscape of the human mind. The way individuals perceive challenges, interpret struggles, and frame their existence is profoundly shaped by psychological processes. From this angle, Earth as a test is not necessarily a literal reality, but a metaphor created by the mind. To understand the complexities of life, human beings are storytelling creatures. We search for patterns, attach meaning to events, and construct narratives that give coherence to experiences that might otherwise feel random or overwhelming. Within this narrative building lies the recurring theme of trials and examinations. We see ourselves as subjects placed in conditions of difficulty, with the hope that by enduring or solving these conditions, we will emerge wiser, stronger, and somehow closer to the truth of existence's mindset is visible from early childhood. Psychologists have long observed that children frame challenges in terms of proving themselves, winning a game, earning approval, demonstrating competence. As we grow older, those challenges become more abstract. They transform into the pursuit of identity, purpose, and meaning. Developmental psychology shows that across every stage of life, human beings interpret difficulties as chances to prove something to themselves or to others. The exams of adulthood are rarely written in classrooms, but in relationships, careers, crises, and moral decisions. To fail feels like shame or loss. To succeed feels like growth or validation. In this way, the human psyche almost instinctively turns the struggles of life into the language of testing, suggesting that the notion of Earth as a test may originate in the fundamental workings of the human mind. Cognitive psychology provides further insights into why humans interpret life this way. The mind has a bias toward teleological thinking, the belief that events happen for a reason or serve a purpose. Even young children naturally assume that rocks exist so animals can rest on them, or that rain falls so plants can grow. This tendency persists into adulthood, where many people feel that challenges appear in their lives not randomly, but as opportunities for growth or signs of destiny. Such beliefs may not be scientifically testable, but they provide psychological comfort and structure. They allow individuals to navigate uncertainty by framing it as meaningful. A painful breakup, for instance, is easier to endure if it is seen as a test of resilience or a lesson in self-awareness, rather than as a meaningless accident. The mind prefers order to chaos, and so it creates the narrative of testing to make sense of hardship. Clinical psychology adds yet another layer, showing how the interpretation of life's challenges as tests can influence mental health. People who see difficulties as insurmountable, meaningless burdens are more prone to despair, anxiety, and depression. By contrast, those who frame challenges as tests often develop resilience. This does not mean they minimize pain, but rather that they view suffering as purposeful, something to endure with dignity and effort. Viktor Frankl, the psychiatrist and Holocaust survivor, wrote extensively about this in his work on logotherapy. He observed that people who could find meaning in their suffering, even if that meaning was framed as passing a test of the human spirit, were more likely to survive and heal from unimaginable trauma. His insights show how deeply the metaphor of testing is rooted in the psychological capacity to endure and overcome adversity. Personality psychology also highlights how different individuals interpret the test of life in different ways. Some people adopt a competitive frame, seeing existence as a series of challenges to be won through achievement, status, or recognition. Others adopt a cooperative frame, interpreting life's test as one that asks for empathy, compassion, and connection with others. Still others approach it from a contemplative angle, viewing the test as a journey of self-awareness and inner peace. These varying interpretations reveal that the notion of Earth as a test is not a singular concept, but a flexible lens through which the human psyche organizes its relationship to the world. The test may not have fixed questions, but it is always experienced through the subjective psychology of the person facing it. Social psychology further reveals how collective groups interpret trials as tests of character. Communities facing hardship often frame it as a collective exam of resilience and unity. When societies endure wars, natural disasters, or economic crises, leaders and storytellers invoke the language of testing. We are being tried. This is a trial of our strength. History will judge how we respond. Such framing gives communities a sense of cohesion and shared purpose, reducing feelings of isolation and despair. Earth as a test, then, is not only a personal metaphor, but a social one, helping groups endure challenges by imagining themselves as participants in a larger process of evaluation. This collective framing has been visible in the American story, where trials from the Revolution to the Civil Rights Movement were often described as tests of national character. It illustrates how deeply the testing metaphor shapes identity, not only individually, but culturally. Another crucial element of the psychological perspective is the role of uncertainty. Human beings struggle with the unknown more than with difficulty itself. A known pain can be tolerated. An uncertain outcome can create paralyzing anxiety. Framing life as a test provides a structure for uncertainty. It implies that challenges have meaning, that questions have answers, even if we cannot see them yet. It turns the unknown into something familiar, like an exam we once sat for in school. We may not know all the questions or answers, but we trust that the test has a design, and that design makes the experience less terrifying. The psychological reframing transforms chaos into curriculum, replacing overwhelming randomness with a structured sense of purpose. Psychology also examines motivation, And here the metaphor of life as a test plays a significant role. People are often motivated not only by survival, but by the desire to prove themselves, to succeed in the face of difficulty, to pass the exams life seems to place before them. This drive can lead to extraordinary achievements in art, science, and human progress. At the same time, it can create pressure and anxiety, as if one's worth is constantly under evaluation. In this sense, the metaphor of testing cuts both ways. It can inspire resilience and greatness, but it can also trap individuals in cycles of stress, perfectionism, or fear of failure. Psychologists study this duality carefully, recognizing that the way we frame life's challenges as crushing burdens or meaningful tests can shape not only our achievements, but our mental well-being. Even in the realm of dreams, psychology hints at testing. Nightmares often place individuals in situations where they are unprepared or unable to complete a task, mirroring the anxiety of failing a test. These dreams reflect deep-seated fears of inadequacy and failure. By contrast, positive dreams often include moments of triumph, mastery, or discovery, suggesting the satisfaction of passing a test. The subconscious itself, in its symbolic language, seems to be preoccupied with evaluation, readiness, and performance. The dream world may not reveal the literal structure of Earth as a test, but it reflects how central this metaphor is to the way human beings process existence. Ultimately, the psychological perspective shows that even if Earth is not literally a test administered by some higher force, the human mind treats it as one. We cannot escape the framing because it is tied to our cognitive biases, our need for meaning, our coping mechanisms, and our collective identities. Whether we are aware of it or not, we interpret struggles as exam questions and victories as proof of passing. Earth as a test is not just a cosmic hypothesis, but a psychological reality, written into the way human beings make sense of their lives, their suffering, and their potential for growth. To imagine Earth as a test through the metaphor of a cosmic classroom is to take one of the most familiar human institutions, school, and extend it across the expanse of the universe. The idea is compelling because classrooms are places where growth is encouraged, where challenges are given not to punish, but to develop potential, and where lessons are often hidden within the very struggles that students face. If Earth is a cosmic classroom, then the experiences of life, its struggles, mysteries, and triumphs become lessons designed to stretch the boundaries of our understanding. The test is not about rote memorization of facts, but about the deeper qualities of resilience, curiosity, compassion, and wisdom that are revealed through how we respond to the lessons of existence in a classroom. Students are rarely told in advance what lessons will matter most. Often, they only realize the significance of a subject years later, when life puts that knowledge to use. Similarly, on Earth, the lessons we encounter often do not reveal their meaning immediately. Hardship may feel senseless in the moment, but later, with perspective, it becomes clear that it taught patience, courage, or empathy. The cosmic classroom does not hand out syllabi or clear timetables. Its curriculum unfolds gradually, lesson by lesson, moment by moment, shaping those who participate whether they recognize it or not. Seen in this light, every encounter, every challenge, and every fleeting moment of joy might be a line in the textbook of existence, a page in a manual written in the language of experience. Evolution itself can be read as the curriculum of this classroom. For billions of years, life on Earth has been enrolled in lessons of adaptation. The earliest cells learned to survive in hostile environments, to harness energy, to cooperate, and eventually to specialize. Multicellular life learned new lessons of complexity, division of labor, and symbiosis. Entire species sat for exams. In survival, sometimes passing, sometimes failing, their grades recorded in the fossil record. Humanity, as the current student in this long-running course, is tested on different subjects: creativity, morality, stewardship of the planet, and the capacity to look beyond survival toward meaning. Each of these lessons resembles a classroom subject, with its own challenges and disciplines, and each demands not only knowledge but the wisdom to apply that knowledge responsibly. If Earth is indeed a cosmic classroom, then suffering itself takes on the character of difficult homework, assignments no one enjoys, but everyone must complete. In schools, students often complain about the workload, the difficulty of certain problems, or the unfairness of strict grading. Yet in retrospect, they realize those very challenges sharpened their minds and prepared them for future tasks. Life's difficulties mirror this process. Illness, loss, disappointment, and fear may feel unbearable in the moment, but they test resilience and reveal strength that might otherwise remain hidden. The classroom is not designed to be comfortable. It is designed to be transformative. The cosmic version of this principle suggests that Earth presents us with precisely the lessons needed for growth, even when we cannot yet see their purpose. The notion of a cosmic classroom also extends to cooperation. In schools, students may be tested individually, but they also learn to work in groups, to collaborate, and to understand perspectives different from their own. Earth reflects this reality. Humanity faces collective tests: climate change, technological ethics, peace, and justice that cannot be solved by individuals alone. These are group projects on a planetary scale, requiring cooperation across cultures, nations, and ideologies. The ability of humanity to pass these collective tests may determine not only its survival, but its readiness to advance to a greater stage in the cosmic classroom. Just as students move from elementary to higher education, humanity may be moving toward higher lessons, but only if it learns how to collaborate rather than compete destructively. Astronomy itself can be viewed as one of the subjects in this grand school. For centuries, humans gazed at the night sky and wondered about their place in the cosmos. The study of stars, planets, and galaxies has been a long homework assignment, teaching humility and curiosity. Every discovery, from realizing Earth is not the center of the universe to detecting planets around other stars, has been like a teacher pulling back the curtain to reveal the next layer of the syllabus. The classroom is not limited to Earth. It stretches into the cosmos, where lessons await about the origins of life, the nature of reality, and the possibilities of intelligence beyond our world. These are not idle questions. They are advanced subjects that test the human mind's readiness to grasp its role in a universe far larger and stranger than any single culture or lifetime can comprehend. In this classroom metaphor, even time itself functions as a teacher. Children in school often feel impatient, wondering why they cannot skip ahead to adulthood. Yet the process of growth cannot be rushed. Similarly, humanity's lessons unfold across centuries and millennia. Scientific revolutions, moral awakenings, cultural renaissances, all of these arrive slowly, as if the curriculum is carefully paced to allow comprehension. Patience becomes part of the test, teaching that some answers cannot be forced but must be lived into gradually. Earth's long history, with its cycles of challenge and renewal, resembles the steady rhythm of school years, each one building upon the last, each one preparing students for something greater. Psychology, as part of this classroom framework, emphasizes self-examination. In school, students take tests not only to prove what they know, but also to reveal what they still need to learn. Failures point toward weaknesses that must be strengthened. In life, too, failures often expose areas for growth. The cosmic classroom is merciless in its honesty. It reveals our flaws as clearly as our strengths. Yet this honesty is not cruelty. It is guidance, pointing us toward the lessons we must embrace. For an individual, that might mean learning humility, patience, or forgiveness. For humanity, it might mean learning stewardship, justice, or responsibility for technology. Each failure, however painful, becomes part of the curriculum, urging students to grow rather than stagnate. Even dreams and imagination belong in the cosmic classroom. Creativity is not a distraction from life's test, but part of its design. Schools encourage not only mathematics and history, but also art, literature, and music. In the same way, Earth's curriculum seems to require imagination, the ability to envision futures, invent tools, compose songs, and tell stories. These acts of creativity test the boundaries of human potential, expanding what it means to be conscious beings in a vast and mysterious universe. Imagination allows us to see beyond survival, to dream of progress, and to create beauty in the face of uncertainty. In this classroom, creativity is not an elective subject but a core part of the exam. The metaphor of Earth as a cosmic classroom also reshapes how we view mortality. In schools, no course lasts forever. Students eventually graduate, leaving behind their teachers, classmates, and the lessons of that grade. Death, in this metaphor, might be viewed as a kind of graduation, a transition from one classroom to another. Whether there is another school beyond remains an open question, but the perspective itself softens the harshness of mortality. It suggests that the end of life is not meaningless, but a natural progression in the curriculum of existence. Each life, no matter how long or short, participates in the lessons of Earth, contributing to the collective education of humanity. Ultimately, the cosmic classroom perspective emphasizes growth, humility, and readiness. Earth, as a school, is not about achieving perfection, but about learning continuously, adapting to new lessons, and preparing for higher stages of existence. The classroom is vast, filled with diverse students, every species, every culture, every individual contributing to the learning process. Its lessons are challenging, often painful, sometimes joyous, always transformative. And while no syllabus is handed to us, the very structure of life suggests that we are here to learn, to grow, and to become more than we were when we first entered this extraordinary classroom among the stars. Among the many ways to frame the idea that Earth could be a test, few are as provocative, controversial, and deeply thought-provoking as the simulation hypothesis. This theory suggests that everything we experience, the trees we see swaying in the wind, the stars scattered across the sky, even our own thoughts and emotions might be part of a vast computational simulation designed by beings far more advanced than ourselves. If that were the case, then Earth is not simply a natural planet or a cosmic classroom, but a carefully programmed environment, a test space designed to observe, measure, and perhaps evaluate how intelligent beings like us behave under given conditions. The simulation hypothesis pushes the notion of Earth as a test into a realm that blends physics, philosophy, and digital technology, and while it remains speculative, it resonates with many features of human experience. Roots of this hypothesis stretch back to philosophy long before the language of computers was available. Thinkers like Plato imagined that what we perceive may only be shadows of a deeper, hidden reality. His famous allegory of the cave describes people chained in darkness, mistaking shadows on a wall for reality itself. In a sense, Plato was describing what modern scientists and philosophers now entertain, that our perception of reality could be limited, filtered, or constructed, and that there may be a truer, deeper reality outside of what we can see. Centuries later, René Descartes asked how we can be sure that our senses are reliable, wondering if some deceiving force could be tricking us into believing a world exists that may not. Today, those ancient philosophical suspicions find new expression in the form of the simulation argument, which adds the tools of modern computation to age-old questions about reality. In the early 2000s, philosopher Nick Bostrom presented a famous version of this idea. He argued that if advanced civilizations can reach a point where they possess the computing power to simulate conscious beings, then one of three things must be true. Either civilizations never reach that stage because they destroy themselves first, or they do reach it, but choose not to run such simulations, or they do reach it and create countless simulations. If the third option is true, then statistically, it may be far more likely that we are living in a simulation than in the one original base reality. This reasoning does not prove the hypothesis, but it frames it as a possibility difficult to dismiss entirely. If correct, Earth itself is not simply a natural testing ground, but a deliberately constructed simulation designed as a kind of cosmic exam. Science fiction has long played with this theme, which is one reason it resonates with the public imagination. Films like The Matrix popularized the idea that human beings might be living inside a computer program, their experiences carefully controlled by hidden designers. While such stories dramatize the concept, they reflect serious questions about how we would know whether reality is authentic or manufactured. If our universe is simulated, then even our most advanced physics experiments might simply be revealing the rules of the program, not the ultimate truth of existence. The speed of light, quantum mechanics, the structure of matter, these could be lines of code, programmed constants in a vast simulation designed to keep the test coherent and functional. From a scientific standpoint, some physicists and computer scientists have even suggested that subtle signs might one day reveal whether our universe is simulated. Just as video games sometimes reveal their artificial nature through glitches or limitations in resolution, our universe might show evidence of underlying code. Ideas such as pixelated spacetime, discrete units of reality at the smallest scales, or mathematical patterns too perfect to be natural have been proposed as potential clues. Though speculative, these suggestions highlight how the simulation hypothesis pushes scientists to reconsider what we mean by reality. If Earth is a simulation, then every test we face is not merely natural but deliberately programmed, each challenge carefully designed by unseen programmers or experimenters. Psychologically, the simulation hypothesis changes the way we might interpret existence. For some, the thought that Earth could be a programmed test is unsettling, stripping away the comfort of believing in a natural world or divine order. For others, it is strangely reassuring, because it implies that there is an intelligence behind the structure of life, even if that intelligence is not divine in the traditional sense. If our struggles are part of a simulation, then they are not meaningless. They are test scenarios coded into the program to observe how we respond. Every act of kindness, every decision to cooperate rather than harm, every pursuit of knowledge could be data points in a grand experiment designed to evaluate our readiness for something greater. Technology also makes the simulation hypothesis easier to imagine than ever before. Human beings are already creating rudimentary simulations of life. Video games, artificial intelligence, and virtual reality environments are increasingly sophisticated, allowing millions of simulated characters to interact in digital worlds. From this perspective, it is not difficult to imagine a civilization far more advanced than ours constructing simulations with such fidelity that the inhabitants believe themselves to be real. If we are already creating test environments for digital beings, perhaps we are also participants in a similar environment created by minds vastly older and more capable than ours. The idea of Earth as a simulated test also resonates with spiritual traditions, though expressed in different language. Many religions describe Earth as a place of trial, where souls are tested before moving on to another plane of existence. The simulation hypothesis offers a modern, technological version of this belief. Instead of gods or divine beings, the examiners might be advanced programmers. Instead of heaven or judgment, there may be further simulations, higher levels of reality into which we graduate if we demonstrate the right qualities. While the language differs, the psychological and existential impact is similar. Earth is not random but purposeful, not meaningless but structured to test and shape those within it. There are ethical dimensions to the simulation hypothesis as well. If Earth is a test designed by advanced beings, what kind of moral framework do those beings follow? Are we being tested for intelligence, compassion, or resilience? Are the programmers benevolent, neutral, or indifferent to our struggles? The problem of suffering becomes even more poignant under this hypothesis. If Earth is simulated, then every pain, loss, and tragedy is part of the program, raising questions about why such suffering is included in the test. Is suffering a necessary condition for growth, or does it reveal a lack of concern on the part of the programmers? These questions mirror age-old theological debates about the problem of evil, but shift them into the language of computation and design. Despite its unsettling aspects, the simulation hypothesis also invites awe. If Earth is simulated, then consciousness itself is remarkable beyond measure, because it means that digital constructs can achieve self-awareness, creativity, and love. The fact that we can even ask whether we are simulated suggests that intelligence, within simulations can transcend its coded origins. This realization raises the possibility that creating simulations is itself a test for civilizations, to see whether they can generate consciousness that is capable of asking the deepest questions about its own reality. Earth, then, might be a node in a chain of tests, each layer of simulated beings eventually reaching awareness, asking if their world is real, and striving to understand the purpose of their existence. The simulation hypothesis does not provide definite answers, but it amplifies the question of Earth as a test by giving it a structure rooted in both philosophy and technology. If true, then everything we experience, our joys, our sufferings, our discoveries, and our moral choices is part of a program designed to evaluate something about us. Perhaps it is our creativity, our capacity for compassion, our ability to build civilizations without destroying ourselves, or our readiness to ascend to higher layers of reality. Whatever the purpose, the idea forces us to see Earth not as an isolated rock in space, but as a carefully designed environment, a stage on which the greatest exam of all may be unfolding in ways we can scarcely comprehend. When we consider the idea that Earth might be a test, no perspective resonates more deeply across cultures and history than the spiritual one. Long before science developed the language of evolution, or before philosophers speculated about simulations, human beings turned to spirituality to explain why life is filled with trials, joys, losses, and mysteries. In almost every tradition, from the banks of the Nile to the mountains of the Himalayas, from the Native American plains to the temples of ancient Greece, the world has been described not merely as a physical place, but as a sacred arena where souls are weighed, where lives are judged, and where choices echo beyond this mortal span. This universal thread suggests that the metaphor of Earth as a test is not a recent invention, but an ancient echo that humanity has always heard in its search for meaning in ancient Egypt. This echo was heard in the belief that after death, the soul would be brought before Osiris, the god of the afterlife. The heart of the deceased would be weighed on a scale against the feather of Ma'at, the symbol of truth and justice. If the heart was light, the soul passed into eternal life. If heavy with sin, it was devoured by a monstrous creature. Here, the earthly life was clearly seen as a test, one whose results determined the eternal destiny of the soul. The lessons of kindness, justice, and honesty were not abstract virtues, but exam questions written into daily existence. The Egyptians lived with the awareness that every decision contributed to the weight of the heart, making life itself an examination of one's moral and spiritual worth. In Christianity, the spiritual echo takes a slightly different form. Earth is described as a place of trial, where human beings are tested in their faith, character, and devotion. Life's hardships are not meaningless but opportunities to demonstrate trust in God, compassion for others, and moral courage. The New Testament often frames life in the language of testing, describing temptations, struggles, and acts of endurance as ways in which faith is refined like gold in fire. From this view, is not the final destination, but a temporary stage, a testing ground where souls prepare for eternity in the presence of the divine. The trials of life, though painful, are given meaning by the promise that they contribute to a higher judgment and a greater reality beyond this world. In Buddhism, the echo takes yet another shape. Life is seen as a cycle of suffering, desire, and rebirth, a continuous journey through samsara. Every moment is a test of awareness, compassion, and detachment. Unlike traditions that imagine an external judge, Buddhism suggests that the examination is internal. The soul is tested by its ability to awaken, to recognize the illusions of attachment, and to cultivate wisdom. Earth, in this framework, is both classroom and test, a place where the lessons of impermanence and compassion must be understood deeply before liberation can be achieved. The exam is not graded by a deity, but by the natural law of karma, where actions inevitably bring consequences. Passing the test means breaking free of the cycle, reaching enlightenment, and transcending Earth's endless cycle of examinations. Islam carries the same resonance of Earth as a test. The Quran often speaks of life as a trial, where wealth, poverty, joy, and suffering are all forms of examination. Human beings are seen as stewards of creation, tested in their use of resources, their treatment of others, and their devotion to God. Death, in this view, is not the end but the point at which the test is concluded and results are revealed. Paradise and punishment serve as the ultimate outcomes, depending on whether one has lived a life of faith, humility, and righteousness. This framework offers a clear and profound interpretation of existence. Every moment, every choice, every temptation is part of a grand exam designed by the Creator to reveal the true nature of the soul. Indigenous traditions across the world also echo this theme in their own ways. Many Native American cultures, for example, describe life as a journey filled with lessons given by the natural world. The animals, the seasons, and the elements themselves are teachers, and survival requires respect, humility, and wisdom. Earth is a sacred test of balance, where the human being must learn to live in harmony rather than dominance. Fail the test, and not only does the individual suffer, but the community and the natural world suffer as well. Here, Earth is not only a testing ground for the soul, but also for humanity's relationship with the land, the water, and the creatures that share the world. This perspective broadens the idea of testing beyond personal salvation to include ecological responsibility, making the survival of the planet itself part of the examination. The spiritual echo can even be found in ancient Greek thought. The myths often describe heroes tested by gods or fate, sent on quests that challenge their strength, cunning, and character. From Odysseus navigating trials on his long journey home, to Hercules facing his labors, the pattern is clear. Earthly existence is a stage for testing courage, intelligence, and virtue. Success is not measured only by survival, but by growth, wisdom, and the ability to honor the divine order. These myths, though expressed in the language of gods and monsters, reflect the same intuition that life is structured as a test, and that the meaning of existence is revealed through how one endures and responds to trial. What unites all of these traditions is the conviction that Earth is not neutral. It is not merely a rock spinning through space, indifferent to human life. Instead, it is a sacred arena of testing, where souls are shaped, measured, and revealed. The hardships of existence, from personal grief to global catastrophe, are not random but integral to the exam. They are the fire that refines character, the puzzles that sharpen wisdom, the temptations that measure integrity. Whether judged by gods, karma, community, or conscience, the human being is always being examined, always standing before some form of spiritual evaluation. Psychologically, this spiritual framing provides comfort and direction. If life is a test, then suffering is not meaningless. It becomes part of a larger story, a purposeful challenge rather than an arbitrary punishment. Spiritual traditions transform pain into pedagogy, turning loss into a lesson and struggle into opportunity. This perspective helps believers endure hardship with hope, trust, and even gratitude, believing that each trial has meaning beyond the immediate moment. It also elevates moral choices, suggesting that small acts of kindness or honesty carry eternal significance, rippling far beyond their immediate impact. The spiritual echo also emphasizes accountability. If Earth is a test, then no action is trivial. Words spoken in anger, decisions made in secret, acts of generosity performed quietly, all are part of the exam. This sense of accountability can guide individuals toward greater responsibility, encouraging them to live with integrity even when no one is watching. The unseen examiner, whether imagined as God, karma, or the ancestors, is always present, always aware, and always recording the outcome of the test. Such awareness shapes entire cultures, influencing laws, rituals, and social practices designed to align daily life with the requirements of the exam. Another dimension of the spiritual echo is hope. If Earth is a test, then life is not a closed loop of suffering but a passage toward something greater. The idea of an afterlife, enlightenment, or reincarnation, offers reassurance that the struggles of this world are not the end, but part of a process leading to fulfillment, liberation, or divine communion. Hope transforms the test from a burden into a journey, offering meaning to those who might otherwise despair in the face of suffering. Even when the exam feels overwhelming, hope whispers that endurance, faith, and compassion will be rewarded in ways that transcend earthly limitations. The echoes of spirituality suggest that whether one believes in ancient gods, universal laws, or divine creators, the metaphor of Earth as a test has always resonated deeply with humanity. It is a pattern repeated across cultures and centuries, arising independently in places separated by oceans and continents. Such universality suggests that the metaphor may not be an accident, but a fundamental way human beings make sense of existence. The spiritual echo transforms every challenge into a lesson, every decision into an answer, and every life into an exam whose results extend beyond this world. It reminds us that to live on Earth is to participate in something greater than survival, to be measured not just by what we achieve, but by who we become in the process. When we think of Earth as a test, one of the clearest and most urgent examinations we face is not a philosophical one, but a practical and collective challenge: stewardship. The word itself means responsibility for taking care of something, but when applied to Earth, stewardship takes on a magnitude that few other responsibilities can rival. If Earth were indeed designed as a test, then perhaps the real question is not how we endure life's difficulties on a personal level, but how humanity as a whole treats the world we have inherited, the resources we depend on, and the delicate web of life that makes our existence possible. Stewardship is the exam question that lies before all of us, written into the air we breathe, the oceans we sail, and the forests we walk through. It is not a question that can be answered by individuals alone, but one that demands collective awareness, wisdom, and action. Throughout history, human beings have often behaved as though the planet is infinite, a limitless supply of food, water, land, and energy. For thousands of years, this illusion seemed convincing, because Earth did feel boundless. The forest stretched endlessly, the rivers seemed inexhaustible, and the seas teemed with fish that appeared to renew themselves without fail. But as human civilization grew, especially in the last 2 centuries, the strain on Earth became undeniable. The population surged into billions, industries consumed resources at staggering rates, and the delicate balance of ecosystems began to tilt. What once seemed infinite is now clearly finite. The atmosphere can only absorb so much carbon, the soil can only sustain so much farming, the oceans can only provide so much food before collapse. Stewardship, then, is not a luxury. It is the central exam question of our Climate change stands as the most pressing section of this exam. The rise in global temperatures, the melting of glaciers, the intensification of storms, and the spread of droughts and wildfires all testify to the reality that humanity's actions are altering the planet's systems. If Earth is a test, then climate change is the question that asks whether we can foresee consequences and take responsibility before it is too late. It challenges our ability to think not just of ourselves, but of future generations. It asks whether we are capable of making sacrifices today for a better tomorrow, of valuing long-term stability over short-term convenience. Failing this question would not mean a poor grade on paper, but the destabilization of the very environment that sustains use. Pollution, too, is part of the exam of stewardship. From the choking smog in industrial cities to the plastic islands floating in our oceans, pollution is a direct reflection of how well or how poorly we manage our role as caretakers of the planet. Microplastics have been found in the most remote parts of Earth, from Arctic ice to the deepest ocean trenches, showing how far our neglect can reach. The test here is one of discipline. Can we innovate, reduce waste, and change consumption habits in order to live in harmony with the environment? Or will we continue unchecked until the planet itself rebels against us, not with malice, but through the natural consequences of imbalance? Biodiversity loss adds another layer to the exam. Every species on Earth represents a thread in the tapestry of life, and yet, human activity has been severing these threads at alarming rates. Habitat destruction, overhunting, and climate change have led to what scientists describe as the sixth mass extinction, an event usually spread across millions of years, but now compressed into centuries or even decades. The test here is one of humility. Can we recognize that human beings are not the only students in this cosmic classroom, and that the exam includes how well we share space with other forms of life? Each extinction is not just a loss of beauty or curiosity, but a failure of responsibility. A missed question on the test of stewardship. The survival of bees, coral reefs, elephants, and countless other species is intertwined with our own, and their decline is a reminder that the exam is not optional. Energy use is another crucial element of the stewardship test. Fossil fuels powered the modern age, but they also left us with the bill: polluted air, warming climate, and geopolitical conflicts. The exam question here is whether humanity can transition to renewable energy, harnessing the power of the sun, wind, and water in ways that sustain our civilization without destroying the balance of the earth. This is not just a technical question, but a moral one, asking whether we are willing to invest in solutions that might not benefit us immediately, but will secure the well-being of countless generations to come. Our answer to this question will echo far into the future, determining whether Earth remains habitable or hostile. Water scarcity further complicates the exam. Freshwater makes up only a tiny fraction of the Earth's resources, and yet, it is essential for survival. Rivers are drying, aquifers are being depleted, and conflicts over water are already emerging in regions where scarcity is severe. Stewardship requires us to manage water wisely, ensuring that it is not wasted or hoarded, but distributed fairly and sustainably. In a test framed by Earth itself, water scarcity asks whether humanity can recognize that some resources are too precious to be taken for granted. It asks whether we can share, conserve, and innovate, or whether we will allow thirst and conflict to spread as symptoms of failure. The test of stewardship also extends beyond the environment to technology and its impact. Artificial intelligence, biotechnology, and space exploration all hold tremendous promise, but they also come with risks. The stewardship exam challenges us to ask not only whether we can develop new powers, but whether we can wield them responsibly. Technology is part of the Earth test because it reveals whether we use our intelligence to heal or to harm, to create or to destroy. The ethical use of technology, like the ethical use of natural resources, is another question on the exam, one whose answers will shape the destiny of our species. On a more personal level, stewardship also plays out in our daily lives. Each choice, from what we eat to how we travel, from the products we buy to the energy we consume, contributes to the larger test. While no single person can solve global issues, each action is like an answer on the exam sheet, small but cumulative. Stewardship is measured not only by leaders and policies, but also by communities and individuals who recognize that their actions matter. The test is not abstract. It is written into the routines of life, and every choice is an opportunity to demonstrate awareness, responsibility, and care. Culturally, stewardship demands a shift in mindset. For centuries, many societies viewed Earth as something to be conquered or dominated. The language of conquest, expansion, and exploitation shaped our relationship with the planet. But the test of stewardship requires a new vocabulary: cooperation, balance, sustainability, and respect. This cultural transformation is perhaps the most difficult part of the exam, because it requires unlearning old habits and embracing new ones. It asks us to see Earth not as a resource to be consumed, but as a home to be protected, not as a battlefield of dominance, but as a shared space of coexistence. Philosophically, stewardship challenges us to think beyond the human lifespan. Most tests we take in life are short-term, with results visible in days or years, but the stewardship exam stretches across centuries. The answers we provide today may not be fully visible until our grandchildren or great-grandchildren inherit the consequences. This makes the test unique, It demands faith, patience, and foresight. It asks us to care for outcomes we may never see, to plant trees whose shade we will never sit under, to protect oceans we may never sail. It is a test of imagination as much as responsibility, one that demands that we think beyond the narrow confines of our own lifetimes. If Earth is a test, stewardship is the section that is graded collectively. Unlike personal trials of character or individual choices of morality, this part of the exam is answered by humanity as a whole. The outcome does not depend on a single person, but on billions of people working together, directly or indirectly, through choices, cultures, and systems. The test of stewardship is not passed by one nation or one group, but by the entire species, recognizing its shared responsibility for the planet. In this sense, the exam is both daunting and unifying, reminding us that, despite our differences, we all depend on the same earth, breathe the same air, and rely on the same fragile balance of ecosystems to survive. If Earth is indeed a test, one of the deepest questions that emerges is what it means to pass. In the ordinary sense of the word, passing a test is simple. You meet a standard, you achieve a score, and you move forward to the next stage. But when the test in question is existence itself, when the classroom is an entire planet, and the exam is written into the fabric of daily life, the definition of passing becomes far less clear and infinitely more profound. Passing may not be about achieving wealth, power, or survival at all. It might instead be measured by something intangible, like wisdom, compassion, or the way we learn to coexist with each other and with the world that sustains us. To even begin to answer what passing means, we must look at this idea from multiple perspectives: scientific, philosophical, spiritual, and even cosmic. Philosophically, passing the test of Earth might mean achieving understanding. Human beings are natural seekers of knowledge, forever curious about why things are the way they are. We study the stars, the atoms, the human mind, and the history of life, not merely to use the knowledge, but to comprehend the grand design, if one exists. Perhaps passing the test means using our intelligence not just to manipulate the world, but to recognize our place within it. This would mean learning humility, realizing that although we are capable of reshaping landscapes, splitting atoms, and traveling beyond our planet, we are still participants in a much larger system. To pass might mean acknowledging limits, understanding consequences, and respecting the mysteries that science has not yet unraveled from a spiritual perspective. Many traditions already view life as a test, and passing is often associated with moral growth. In religions across the world, from Christianity to Islam to Buddhism, Earth is seen as a stage where souls are tried, measured, and prepared for something beyond. The test is not only about how long we live, but about how we live. Whether we show kindness, compassion, honesty, and love. In this sense, passing is not about external achievements, but internal ones. It might mean that the measure of a human life is not what we build, but how we treat each other, not what we conquer, but how we care. To pass could be to evolve more, not just biologically, to move closer to ideals of peace, empathy, and justice. In such a framework, Earth becomes the testing ground of the heart, a place where choices carry weight not only in this world, but, perhaps, in what lies beyond. There is also a more personal and inward-looking interpretation. What if passing simply means becoming aware that there was a test at all? Many people live life focused only on immediate needs, without stepping back to ask broader questions. But if Earth is a test, then perhaps one of the hidden questions is whether we ever realize that we are being tested in the first place. Awareness, reflection, and the search for meaning might be signs of progress, proof that we are not only moving through life mechanically, but consciously. Passing could mean waking up to the deeper significance of existence, even if the answers remain elusive. In this sense, the very act of questioning what if Earth is a test might already be a step toward success. Ultimately, the meaning of passing may be less about reaching a fixed destination and more about the journey itself. Perhaps the test is not about achieving perfection, but about striving, not about arriving. at final answers, but about continually asking the right questions. Passing might not be about transcending Earth or escaping mortality, but about learning how to live fully within the constraints of time, matter, and limitation. It may be that Earth's test is less like a final exam with rigid answers, and more like a lifelong essay, graded not on correctness, but on sincerity, effort, and growth. And maybe, just maybe, the true measure of passing lies not in what we achieve individually, but in what we create together as a species, as stewards, as thinkers, as dreamers, and as a collective presence on this fragile, beautiful world. We have drifted through these reflections, weaving science with philosophy and imagination with history. The question, what if Earth was a test, begins to feel less like a riddle and more like an invitation. It asks us to look at our lives not just as random sequences of events, but as moments stitched together with meaning. It invites us to see every challenge not merely as an obstacle, but as a lesson, every success not simply as luck, but as a sign of growth, every relationship not only as chance, but as an opportunity to learn compassion and empathy. Science shows us that survival itself is a kind of examination, one written in DNA and played out over billions of years. Psychology teaches us that humans make sense of struggle by framing it as a trial, a test that measures resilience. Spiritual traditions remind us that how we live, how we love, and how we care for one another may be the true questions of this great exam. And in the cosmic sense, the test might be whether we can become wise enough to not only survive on Earth, but to be trusted with the universe beyond it. Whether or not Earth was ever designed as a literal test may never be answered. But the beauty of the idea is that it changes the way we see ourselves. It makes us reflect more deeply, act more responsibly, and live more consciously. If Earth is a test, then every day is an opportunity to learn, to grow, to choose kindness over cruelty, wisdom over ignorance, and stewardship over neglect. And perhaps that is the point, not to pass in some final, cosmic sense, but to recognize that the exam is already in progress, and that the act of striving itself is what gives life its meaning.